Hello, I'm Tim Mead. I'm the CURE orthopedic surgeon serving on the edge of the Rift Valley. I work at the CURE Hospital. This is in Kenya, over in East Africa. I've been with CURE International since 1998. I was one of the first orthopedic surgeons to join CURE International. When I went to Kenya the first time in 1997, I went for my once-in-a-lifetime, never-to-be-repeated trip to Kenya. And then God brought Scott and Sally Harrison into my life, and we ended up sharing the same housing area. And then Scott took me on a walk that was just a flat piece of ground with one small little wall, and showed me his vision for CURE. And at the end of the vision walk, I just felt God telling me, this is where you're gonna go. And I said, I have 4 kids, moved my wife to Africa, and it just didn't seem like it would be a sensible idea.
I ran into a friend a couple years ago that I hadn't seen for maybe 20 years, 18, 20 years, so before CURE time. And I said to her, at that time I knew you. Did I ever talk about going to the mission field? Did I ever talk about going to Africa or wanting to be a missionary? And she said, no, you never did.
As Christians, we talk to God about having a career path that He gives us. Sometimes we don't even look for where the stop signs or the directions go. In this case, I felt very clearly this is the next part of my career, is to go into the third will. Although I felt God's leading, I don't think I've ever heard Him speaking in my ear, but I had the sense that God's saying, I'll bring people alongside you. Intuitively, you know that if that's the case, God's talked to some other people as well, maybe some you've never even met. Hello, there's Tim Mead waiting for me, and I'd already been told that he would be there. I just didn't know what his name was.
One aspect that I really liked about him is just the way that he always talked about his wife. That's something, because I got married when he was still here. Every time is Jana likes this, Jana likes that. Jana would want this to be done in this way. And I just thought, even myself, I should be saying Lillian likes this, Lillian. That's my wife anyway.
Well, when I think of Jana Mead, I think of her as a heroine. And I hope I don't insult him when I say that she is as much a heroine as he is a hero to the children in Kenya. Jana has always been a quilt maker, and some of her quilts still hang in the hospital there in Kenya. But she heard of a group of women in Nairobi who wanted to learn how to quilt. So she became their teacher, and she would go in and spend several weekends teaching them. And she said, the reason I taught them the quilting was that they let me talk about Jesus.
To ever think that God would give us this privilege of being able to do this kind of stuff is overwhelming.
While Tim was starting up the Philippine hospital, Jana was working with the street women, the prostitutes in the city. And she said we would go in at 5 o'clock in the evening and talk with them before their work began. We would do everything we could for them, take gifts into them just to let them know that they were loved by God.
Tim Mead is passionate about Jesus, passionate about ministry, passionate about the kids, and passionate about training. But I think for me, what stood out was just, we have these long mobile clinics. We drive 6-7 hours. You get up to a place, everybody is tired, and Dr. Mead is just trying to see patients, love on them, see them others. So I think to me that just really stood out because he was just ready to see patients at any time.
Tim was a man who responded to where he felt God was leading him. You could go to almost any CURE hospital, and sure enough, he'd somehow be there. And I didn't ever figure out how that we did that.
I think everywhere you see Tim Mead, you get the effect that he's trying to grow people. It's not him working, but him trying to transfer his spirit in other people's lives. Initially, I was the only Kenyan or African guy around here, very small. And everyone was focusing on me, whether it was Tim Mead, Scott Harrison.
I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't think Tim would think this was even a criticism. He may be a better doctor now than Tim is. But most importantly, if he's better than Tim, it's because Tim started him down that road, and he was able to keep going.
Dr. Tim is like a father to me. He talks about life and the Lord and how he loves God. But I learned more when he was not speaking. I learned more when he was quiet instead of being angry in the OR. I learned more when he reacted the way I know Christ would when things got bad.
Training is really key to my heart. I use Kenya as an example. We used to say that every year about 1,200 children were born with club feet. Then say I can do 300 every year. So every year I'm now only 900 behind. Well then, if I train someone like Theory, and he and I each do 300, so that's 600. So now we're halfway there. Now, if Theory and I each train one more, 400, we're even. Sammy Maina was one of the early trainees, and he spent 3 years with me. We had to send him at that time up to Uganda because there was no orthopedic residency in Kenya. He came back and worked for a little while with us, but then went down and now has been really one of the anchor surgeons in entire Malawi. The same thing happened with Saro Ilo, trained with us and then certified and then went down to Zambia. Theory is medical director of Kijabe, Kenya, and he came back after his certification, and he and I worked together, and we got the very first orthopedic residency started in the country.
You look at the people that work at the hospital, Dr. Mbugo, Dr. Theory, Dr. Kinywa. We have Mesfin and Teddy in Ethiopia. All of them have gone through the COSAXA program, which would not have been possible without Dr. Mead. Looking at Kenya as a country, he really, you could almost say that he's the father of orthopedics. He's really the father of orthopedic training in Kenya.
This is really what I'm called to do. I was in private practice in Western Michigan, and I was earning a lot of money, living a really great life, but then God called me to take care of disabled kids.
Sometimes I'll tell Tim, you know, I married you for your money, and look what you did. You retired, and you quit making money. Hello, you should have told me this in the beginning.
We actually have a name for him. We call him Mzee, which means an old man. But you know, in a nice way, somebody full of wisdom, somebody who brings a lot, somebody who's a father.
I've always admired Tim and Jana for wherever they were needed, they were willing to go.
I look at Dr. Tim as, you know, he embodies what CURE is. Yes, I learned surgery. Yes, I learned how to treat and love the kids, but he taught me the best thing, and that is how to love the Lord.
If we didn't have a Tim Mead in the history of CURE, it would be very, very different. I doubt it would be as good. In fact, I just about guarantee that.
I think his legacy will continue, and you know, he's leaving a lasting impression on myself, on the staff in Kijabe, and a lot of the people across the network.
I think the God who made him will call him again. Yeah, and tell him get back to work.
But it's totally been worth it. I would not trade any of this for all the money in the world. You know, I get to see all these kids in heaven someday.
It's one of those questions that, you know, why me? Why did God pick me? There are many, many people in the United States who have much, much more advanced training than I did. Every time I look at some of these kids and I look at where they had come from and where they end up, I'm just utterly amazed. Your vocation is where the world's greatest need meets your greatest joy. And I think this is about as close as I can get to that.